2,200 men, women, and children. That is how many people Human Rights Watchers estimate have now been killed in the last several months by Syria's dictatorship. Officials in Syria, they blame Muslim extremists, they blame roving criminals and outsiders. They deny killing children, but every day new video emerges contradicting those denials. What you're about to see, we need to warn you, is revolting, even after we blur out portions of it. It shows you a young boy shot in the head. It claims to be from the city of Dara just today. Human rights advocates say at least 7 people were killed today on the streets of Syria, most of them in Dara, where the uprising began. At least 24 killed since the week began. Today is Eid al-Fitr, the end of Ramadan. Now, instead of celebrating, though, Syrians are standing up in mass demonstrations. Look at the size of this one today in Homs. You can see a wave of humanity, people making themselves heard, protesting peacefully. Sadly, in Homs and other cities across Syria, their cries for freedom are being met with gunfire. This is how Syrian security forces handle dissent, protest. You've seen it again and again. You've seen children gunned down. Some like this child, barely a toddler, just 2 years old. You've seen rescuers shot at and ambulances fired upon, and over and over and over again, you've also seen Syrian officials deny responsibility. Watch what the Syrian ambassador to the United Nations said on this program when I asked him about it just a week and a half ago. I mean, how can children be targeted and then returned to their parents? Or do you deny that's happening?
Absolutely. Children are not targeted by the police, neither by the army. But let me comment on what you have just said. The report of the High Commissioner is unfounded and biased. She didn't reflect any of my government's points of view in her report. She didn't even go to Syria. She just relied on reports coming from Syrian refugees in South
Well, sir,
Turkey.
back in April, you yourself said that no international commission needed to come to Syria or was allowed to come to Syria because your government was perfectly capable of being transparent and doing your own investigations. But that certainly does not seem to be true.
No, absolutely. I'm sticking to my words, and we are not talking about the commission coming from Geneva. We have allowed, after the presidential statement adopted by the Security Council, we have allowed a mission, a humanitarian mission from OCHA.
Well, Syria's ambassador to the United Nations on this program. Now, after not allowing a human rights delegation into Syria, and despite whatever he says and whatever his fancy suit and all his talk, the government there did not allow a delegation back into Syria. Then the Assad regime reluctantly permitted a UN humanitarian mission to visit. That's the one the ambassador was just talking about. We've just gotten a preliminary media statement from that UN mission. It says that while there's no countrywide humanitarian crisis, meaning basically there's enough food and water for Syrians, quote, the constant presence of government officials limited the mission's ability to fully and independently assess the situation. However, the report continues, the people it was able to talk to in areas of previous or ongoing unrest said they felt extremely intimidated and under constant threat. And this is what happened in Homs on the day that UN observers visited, just moments after they left. So what happened, predictably, is government forces opened fire and people died right after the UN left. Now, as always, these videos come via the internet. They're posted by human rights groups and Syrian dissidents. We can't independently verify them because we should point out we're not permitted into Syria to see for ourselves. The ambassador lied again, saying, oh, of course, journalists are welcome in and you can go anywhere, you can travel freely. That's not the case. We've had people there and they're not able to travel freely. They're not able to go around without government minders. Syrian officials deny responsibility for what you're seeing, even as they deny they're stifling access to outside reporters and observers.
You don't know all the faces of the story, Anderson.
Well, first of all, because you're not allowing us in. You're not allowing reporters to actually go to the front lines and see this. You're restricting reporters, so it's a little disingenuous to say you don't know the truth when you're not allowing the international community to see the truth.
Anderson, this is wrong too, because we have allowed 3 delegations, big delegations of tourists and journalists and reporters to enter the country.
You're right, and you keep them in Damascus or you control them very carefully.
No, we don't control anybody. We are there to protect them from the armed groups.
I wanted to tell him I reported in Syria years ago in Damascus 5 years ago, and I had a government minder who followed my every move and observed who I talked to. And that was in a time when there wasn't allegedly these armed gangs, as they keep saying. Yet again, that claim is contradicted by the UN mission. Take a look at the Q&A they published with their statement. Was the mission given free and independent access? Answer: although the mission was permitted to visit any location that it requested, it is doubtful that Syria has fully complied with its assurances of providing free and unimpeded access. And remember, Ambassador Jafari's claim that government minders are only there for protection? Well, take a look at what happened when America's ambassador to Syria, Robert Ford, went out on the streets of Damascus. He was surrounded, harassed by a pro-Assad mob. This video aired on Syrian TV station owned by an Assad-in-law, which heavily edited the footage and tried to paint the incident as Ambassador Ford leading an anti-government protest. It takes a lot of editing to make even cheap propaganda. The rest of the video you've seen tonight and almost every night for months now, we barely even edit for its length. Its truth, we think that its truth speaks plainly. So do the ordinary Syrians that we speak to almost every night in this program, including the man from Dara who was brave enough to speak out tonight. Joining us now is Professor